Hello again, everybody. This is Mr. Everything, and I'm coming at you with another Wargaming in miniature video. In this video, we're going to be making a D&D monster from scratch. It's called the Froghemoth. It's a huge monstrosity, looks similar to a frog, has tentacles, and it's just vicious. Okay, now here, let me see if I can pull up a picture. There it is. Now that right there is the Froghemoth right there. And it's got like an eye stalk at the top. It's got 4 tentacles, a tongue, a mouth, and a couple of feet. And that's it, right? So what we're going to do today is we're going to take an old Roper miniature of mine. I've taken the base off the bottom, and as you can see, the Roper model is a hollow shell of a miniature, right? But it already has the 4 tentacles I need. It already has the mouth that I need for the Froghemoth. It's just not shaped like a giant frog monster, right? So what we're going to do today is give it legs, or feet, I should say. Not really legs. Well, there will be some legs, but mostly feet. And that's what the cork down here is going to be. We're going to make the legs out of cork. We're going to shave the top of his head off. I'm going to make this Roper, instead of it looking rocky and jagged and squared off, I'm going to add some milliput to this model, making it more rounded and smooth. I'm going to smooth it down, and then I'm going to put the milliput on the cork as well once I trim this and make it the shape I want it, so that once I put the Froghemoth body onto the feet, it'll stand up fairly tall. As you can see, it's kind of this is a 3-inch base, so this is kind of tall. And then I'm going to have to add a tongue out of the mouth, and all of that's going to be done with milliput. Now, I suspect that this process is going to take more than 1 or 2 days, so I'm going to be filming this over the course of the entire process, and then I'll upload it all as one video. One of the first things I want to do is trim the feet. So that's going to be 1 foot. Okay, so we got two feet, right? Now all I need is just a very small knee piece. A very small piece that's going to pose as the knee. I'm saving all these pieces here because I'm going to stuff these all inside here before I start puttying it, so that I don't waste putty. Basically, it'll fill in. It's like a filler. All right, and that's the knee there. That's about the height of a miniature right there, maybe just a little bit shy. And then once I get this all filled up and rounded, let's get a little bit of my Gorilla Clear Grip out. And then what I want to do is I do want to kind of put some filler in here. So I'm just going to put a little bit of glue along the outer edges. Maybe add a little bit more glue to the cork itself. That's just basically just to ensure, or to save me some milliput, so I don't waste a lot of milliput on the bottom of this thing. Okay, I'm going to let that sit in there and let that dry for a while I clear off all this extra cork, because we're done with the cork. Okay, now one thing I needed to do was glue the cork down to the base so that when I go to put the milliput on, it doesn't move around. And I'm going to kind of pigeon toe. Well, I don't know what they call that when you angle your feet outwards. Is that pigeon toe? I think that's what they call that. Okay, so that's got that. The thing's going to go on there like that. Okay, I'm going to have to let this glue dry for about 30 minutes before we continue. I'll be right back. All right, welcome back, guys. The bottom here is not completely dry, but I figured that we would be able to knock a step out while we're waiting for this to dry. Like I said, I need to cut the top of the head off. So what I did was I took my saw blade and put it in my X-Acto knife handle to make cutting a lot easier. And I got rid of my whiteboard because I'm going to actually do some cutting, and I want to make sure that I don't cut into my whiteboard. Aha! There, clean cut. Now I've got this little piece there. Okay, so I've thought about rounding it and stuff like that. I don't really need to do that because once I put the milliput on here, it's going to round everything. All right, so we got one more step tonight, and before I let everything dry, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the roper body without the head, obviously, and I'm going to glue it to the legs like this. And then once everything's dry, probably tomorrow, I'm going to go back in and I'm going to coat everything with the milliput. And then we'll press it down. Press it down. Not necessarily centering it. I'm putting it a little bit back on the base. You can kind of see that I'm putting it a little bit back. And it looks like I'm going to have to let that dry overnight for that glue to really dry. And once it does, we'll come back and use milliput, right? And so I'm just going to leave all this out overnight. All right, I'll see you in just a few minutes. All right, guys, welcome back. We are going to, I've decided what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of my dry deck spackling and I'm going to put an undercoat, an underlayer, I don't know what you want to call it, like I'm going to filler the body and everything before I start using the milliput. So basically what I'm trying to say is that I want to use this filler to kind of save money and to yeah, so I don't have to use a lot of milliput. I'm going to put the milliput on top of the putty. So the putty, as you can see, is like a spackling, a dry deck spackling, and I'm going to put it on there to even out the rocks that are the roper, right? And we can actually cover the eye at the top because I'm going to make like a little eye stalk coming out of the top of this thing. See, it still looks like a big pyramid, like a big triangle. I don't want that, so I have to put a lot more on the top than I have on the bottom because I want it to be kind of equal, like almost as fat on the top as it is on the bottom. Yeah, that's coming around. That's looking really good. Okay. All right, now this putty takes about 30 minutes to an hour to dry. So once I get the putty on, I'm going to have to let it sit for an hour or so before I start putting the milliput on. Yep. Okay, so we're going to let that putty dry, and then we'll put the milliput on afterwards. All right, I'll see you back in about 30 minutes. All right, guys, I've let this plaster dry overnight. It's still a little cool to the touch, but that's what plaster is. It's always going to be cool to the touch. There was a little bit of dripping going on underneath the side. I just had to go in there with my finger and kind of tuck it up throughout the evening until it gripped and decided to hold tight. The tentacles tend to want to fold in. I keep trying to pull them out and bend them out, hoping there's a wire on the inside, but I don't think there is because every time I let go, it just folds back in on itself. So I don't know if it's just retaining its memory or what. So I am kind of pulling these out. I wish they were just sticking straight out with wires inside, because then I could mold them the way I wanted them once I'm done with this next step. The next step is actually going to be the milliput step. That's probably the most important step. of this process. I have some milliput that I have been using already, and I made some other miniatures with this and some terrain. So I'm going to dig this out. You can see that it's very little milliput left in there. Okay, milliput is a two-part putty. It has, in this case, yellow and gray. The yellow is the putty. The gray here, it happens to be like the bonder, or the when they mix together, that's when the bonding process begins, and the drying process as well. And so, and it dries extremely durable. You can actually make figures with it. You can repair plumbing with it. That's what it's designed for, actually. My understanding is it's a plumbing repair putty. I have another set here that I bought in anticipation of doing a lot more terrain, a lot more models and stuff like that. Okay, so you can take your fingers and you can pinch off a certain amount if you would like. I'm just going to go with a little bit. Now you want to pinch off about the exact same amount of the gray. Okay, and then we can set these off to the side, being sure to keep them separated. And then what you can do is, this is what I do. I just flatten this out a little bit. And I'm doing it on this whiteboard and not this paper, just so that I can manipulate a little bit better. And it wipes off of the whiteboard pretty easily. Okay, so I'm flattening this piece out as well, tearing it, doesn't matter. And then I just push it down on top of this other piece, as well as I do the same thing with that piece. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to knead these two together, which basically just means I'm going to keep pressing them together over and over and over and over and over and over. I'm going to do the same with this. You can wet your fingers. That's why I have the water here, so that I can keep my fingers kind of wet, so it doesn't want to stick to my fingers, but to push the model off to the side. And you can see it's not mixed. You got to keep going at it. You got to keep going at it. And this might be too much at one time. You want to work with small amounts, a little bit at a time. I thought this was small enough, but I guess I could be wrong. It's like a sword, like a Japanese sword maker. You take the putties, you press them down into a sheet, then you fold them over and you press them down again, and you fold them over and you press them down again. And what it is the yellow and the gray tend to mix together. The better you mix it, the more consistent of a hardness you'll get once in a consistent drying time when you're complete with your model. Okay, so let me knead this together and then I'll be right back. All right, we're back. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take little pieces of this. I'm just going to take little chunks off of this, and I'm going to stick it on there. And we're going to kind of flatten it into the cracks and the crevices and the, anywhere that I need there to be putty, right? And I don't need it to. Now be aware that when this putty dries, it's going to be rock hard. It's going to be harder than pewter. It's going to be like adamantium. So you got to make sure that you work it and you push it into place where you want it before it dries. All right, so it's coming together. I've got the putty on top, but I can tell just by looking at it that there's like a little, I want to round that piece off there. I want to maybe there's filling this little gap. There's like a little hole right there, maybe round that off and then do the legs. So what that means is I need to put together some more milliput, because I used all the milliput that I had remaining in the other package to cover this. You can take your finger and wet it down and go over the milliput while it's still malleable and kind of get rid of the seams. You can make it smooth. You can get rid of your finger, because when you stick it and you pull your finger out, you get all these little spikes that stick up. You can get rid of that by wetting your finger and then just running over it. I went all the way up to the mouth, and once I get all this painted, you know, all that will disguise the bulby head of the roper. And then I think I'm going to make a little eye stalk sticking out the top front of the thing right here probably. And then I'm also going to make a longer tongue as well as covering these feet. So, but first, before I do the second layer, I'm going to call it the second layer. Before I do that, I'm going to let this dry probably another 30 minutes or so before I start working again with the project. Okay, so I'm going to let this sit for a moment and we'll be right back. All right, now the last piece I'm going to do is I mixed a little bit more putty. This guy is pretty much completely covered except for his tongue and his eye stalk. Now I think I need a piece about this big, and there's supposed to be 3 eyes at the top of this stalk, and the stalk's going to be a thin body, thin like whatever they call the stalk, and then at the top of the stalk it's going to be like a wide, it's going to be kind of like a T, right? It's going to be a T with 3 eyes up there. So what I need to do, I guess, is make the stalk kind of thin and round at the bottom. I don't need the stalks to be too gigantic. Let's take some of this bottom piece off because I need to make the eyes as well. I'm not going to model the eyes into the stalk. You'll see what I'm doing. But I am going to make like a paddle, right? I'm making a top flat area, and then I'm making the bottom of the stalk kind of a rounded bulbous area. I don't know what you call it. The stalk, I don't know what you call it. Like that, right? Okay, now I'm going to arch it because I want it to be kind of swooping, and then I'm going to stick it right on the front because I think I've got a pretty good location where I want this stalk to be. Put my fingers and blend it in, smoothing it around. Gotta blend the backside or you'll have like a seam, and you don't want to do that. Whoop, my fingernail poked it in the front. There we go. Maybe I should have cut my fingernails. Okay, maybe I need a tool for this. That worked. That actually worked really well. Got rid of the seams. Okay. Now this eye stalk, okay, needs some eyes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 3 equal pieces of milliput and I'm going to roll it up into a ball. You know, just like you would normally roll up any kind of putty into a ball. And then I'm going to take that ball and I'm going to stick it into the eye stalk. Right now it's a cyclops. I'm going to pull it up. You can't, it's not focused probably, but you can see the 3 eyeballs on the stalk. Yeah. Now let's make a tongue. Alright. Now, unfortunately, I've got to let that sit there and dry for like 8 hours. So I'll see you in just a couple of seconds. Okay, I've decided I can't wait to put the tongue on. I'm too excited. So what I'm going to do is, and plus this is going to be a better technique anyway. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a paper clip and I'm going to drill a hole into the mouth where the tongue will go. And then I'm going to use the wire of the paper clip to be the frame for the tongue. And then I'll wrap the milliput around the wire frame and it'll hold it in place while it dries. Okay, so I got to find the spot where I'm going to drill, which is going to be directly in the center, even though I don't know if it should be directly in the center, but that's where I'm going to drill. Okay, so we've got a hole in there. Now I have to decide how the tongue is going to be out. And I brought my clippers here to clip the wire off that's excessive for the tongue. Don't need this piece of wire. Okay. So how do I want this tongue to look? Well, I think I want it to go down and around and up. So that's kind of the way we're going to do it. We're going to go down. So the tongue's going to sit a lot like that. Okay. So let's work the tongue onto the paperclip from the tip. Okay, it's on there. It's smooth. It's completely encased except for the bottom of the tongue. It's about to be fully encased because I'm working it. Set that down just for a moment while I clean my fingers off. Now I'm going to take some of this Clear Grip E6000 Gorilla Glue Clear Grip, and I'm going to put it in the hole, in and around that hole. And we're going to stick it in that hole. Here we go. Come on, it's still kind of... There we go. That's going to look like an animated tongue sticking out. Here, let's see if I can kind of... You can kind of see how that goes. And that'll be scary. Hopefully that will be very, very scary. Yep, that looks good. Okay, so we got our eye stalk, we got our tongue, we got our feet, we got everything's pretty much done. So I gotta let this dry, and we're gonna let it dry overnight, and then tomorrow I'll get into painting it, and then we'll see what it looks like after it's painted. I'll see you in just a couple of minutes. Alright guys, so far we're doing pretty good. Now this is the Froghemoth, the putty. It's dried, you know, I can tap on it. It's still the same night. I finished putting the putty on probably around 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and it's now midnight. So we're, you know, it's 7 hours, so I figured that's enough. I'm going to take it outside. I'm going to prime it black. I'll come back in and show you what it looks like when it's black. And then after that, we'll do a little painting. Alright, so let me go prime it. I'll be right back. Alright guys, we got this thing primed. And I want to give you kind of a close-up view. So I've got to adjust my focus here. Hang on. There we go. So now we got the eye stalk with the eyes. You can kind of see that, right? The eye stalk with the eyes. You got the putty bodies. You got the mouth, which has a little bit of teeth, as well as this giant tongue coming out of it, right? I can't really see that right now in the shadow, right? I mean, it's hard to kind of really see the mouth right there with the teeth. But once I get it painted up, it's good. You got the feet with the big, huge flipper fins, right? And then you got these tentacles. I just went ahead and primed the entire thing. Whoop, there's a little spot right there. The tentacle, apparently, when I primed it, was covering some of that. So, but when I paint it, that'll disappear. That's not a big deal. All right, guys, and I've got this on about a 3, just over a 3-inch base, so it'll be considered a huge model. All right, guys, I'm going to paint this. I'll come back and I'll let you see the results. All right, guys, this is the Froghemoth model that I was scratch building, and it is finished. It is, well, it is built and it is primed. So I'm going to end the video here with the finished construction, and then I'm going to start a second video where I actually do the painting of this model, which I'm going to start here in just a few minutes. So come back and check out the second part of this video where I am painting this model. See you then.